for the drums.
Hey guys.
Hey, Keith.
Hey, Keith.
Hey, so back again, continuing our journey through these mental models. This is mental model 8.1. We're going to begin to get now into the four pill types. And we've been taking this very slow is smooth, smooth is steady kind of journey, scaffolding all the way up through all of the mental models that we've done so far. And a big part of those were to parse apart what does it mean in Tableau for a given column of data to be treated as a dimension. What happens when a given column is treated as a measure? And then after that, we covered discrete. What does it mean for a column of data to be discrete? And we covered continuous. And so in today's mental model, what I'd like to do is begin to bring all of these things together and really make the case that Tableau is agnostic to your data. It doesn't have an opinion. It doesn't, suggest that things need to be or must be one way or the other. And do that as a way to introduce this concept of the four pill types.
All right, let's jump in.
Okay. So the way that I wanted to begin was with this quote that comes from the Tableau documentation. And I saw it also inside of the Tableau e-learning. And I pull it up because I want to do a little bit of myth busting or just clarification of this thing, because I believe that this type of sentence in the documentation and in the e-learning can be a significant source of that kind of confusion that we're trying to resolve here. They say that measures contain quantitative data. So filtering a field of this type of data uh, generally involves selecting a range of values that you want to include. And so to me, the kind of confusing notion of this particular assertion in the e-learning and in the documentation is saying that measures just kind of come out of the box as containing quantitative data. And so measures are what they are. And then it stands to reason that dimensions contain categorical data, and those are what they are. And to me, this can sort of remove the sense of agency from the practitioner, because as the practitioner, we actually get to choose whether a given field is treated as a dimension or as a measure.
Yeah, I'm taking this in right now. I think it's one of those places where so many people work with numbers in their daily use that this this situation where most people work with numbers the way we want to work with numbers most of the time is as a measure. Therefore, measures are quantitative, measures are numbers. Um, I think about like, okay, how does this thing come about? And then there's this place with what we're getting into here is this place where we actually can control that in Tableau, for one thing. And then there's this other place where there's a whole lot of people who do work with data that doesn't actually have numbers in it, that numbers are things that are derived from the data. So for example, with survey data, in a lot of cases, we're actually counting things in the data, but the data doesn't actually have numbers.
The data doesn't have those numbers. Yeah. So to me, like,
Yeah.
if I could just modify this sentence in a simple way,
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, after you as the practitioner have chosen to treat a given column of data as a measure, then it contains quantitative data, right?
Now, Keith, we're talking about measures and dimensions,
Mm-hmm.
quantitative and discrete versus continuous kind of things. You said there's four different pill types. So it's more than just discrete and continuous measures and dimensions. So how are you breaking those apart?
Yeah, well, that's it. Those are the four pill types. Every different column of data in Tableau is a pill, and you can drag that pill out onto the canvas. And when you drag it out onto the canvas, you get to make the election. Is that thing going to be treated as a dimension or a measure is one election, or will it be continuous and discrete is another election. And so the main point is here that you can have continuous dimensions, you can have continuous measures, you can have discrete dimensions, and you can have discrete measures. And so these then are the four pill types. It's really just two different choices that you make. Do you treat the thing as a dimension or a measure, or you treat it as discrete and continuous?
And can I point out one thing on this,
Yeah,
Keith,
yeah.
on this slide is that when we're looking at the data in what Tableau's provided, when we're looking at dimensions, we're seeing the name of the field. And when we're looking at measures, there's going to be either an aggregation keyword and or that little delta icon of the table calculation on the field. And so it's not the blue. I love this diagram because it really shows that blue versus green is continuous or discrete, and then dimension or measure is about how the pill is labeled.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
labeling of the pill we've talked about in a couple of our previous conversations. There's a few incremental locations where that labeling of the pill is just
Mm-hmm.
not exactly precise. But
Yeah.
98% of the time, that labeling of the pill, if it's wrapped in some kind of aggregate, then it's an aggregate. If it has a delta symbol, then
Mm-hmm.
it's a table calculation, which is also an aggregate. Those things are measures, right? And then if it's not wrapped in any of those things, then it's a dimension. And the blue and the green is really discerning between discrete and continuous. And so the main idea here then is that the canvas in Tableau is our workspace, and that Tableau is just agnostic to the data. So in the left-hand data pane, what you have is a series of defaults, right? So when the application opens up, or when the person who's curated your published data source, publishes a data source for you, they're presenting for you over here in the left-hand data pane uh, what they believe is the most appropriate place to begin from, the set of defaults. Um, but the point is that Tableau is completely agnostic. It doesn't really have any familiarity with the domain meaning of the values of the data, or even your intention of what you're attempting to accomplish, or what kind of viz you want to specify on the view. Um, and so then from those defaults in the left-hand data pane, every pill on the canvas then is up to you to configure. As you drag it out, you can change those defaults, and you can make adjustments and elections as you go. And so what I wanted to do today in order to illustrate this is to use one single column of data in all four ways, just to demonstrate that every pill on the canvas could be used in various locations, in various different ways, in various different configurations, multiple times, in order to weave together the specific visualization that we're going for. So what I want to do, if you're willing.
Can I jump in with one caveat to that?
Uh-huh.
Because I always have trying to think about the bigger picture of use and needing to stick little asterisk on things.
Yeah.
When we're talking about the fields in our data, we're totally in this place of Tableau's completely agnostic to the data and how we want to use it, up to a certain point, because we're different data types ending up being treated a little differently. But also there are some limits when we start doing calculated fields. Like we can't turn a table calculation into a dimension, for example, which gets into Tableau's order of operations.
Oh, thank you for
And
bringing that out. Yeah,
what it will
absolutely.
let being computed where. Yep. So there are some limits, but this core of Tableau, and it's a really huge thing for a lot of us who are old farts in the data world and everything, because we come out of places where there were particularly the decision support systems and cubes and such like that defined what could be used as a dimension or what could be used as a measure, and that was fixed. And Tableau freeing us from that
Right.
was a huge change.
Yep, that was one of the massive kind of breakthroughs when Tableau came about, was that the whole idea is that you could connect to your record level detail, and as the analyst, determine when and where that aggregation occurs, um, and get good performance off of an extract,
Hmm.
as opposed to those cube-based solutions, which would, kind of define aggregates for you at a certain set of dimensions, but then you were stuck
Hmm.
with that aggregation no matter what. And thank you for calling
Hmm.
out that the table calculations are built on top of aggregate calculations. Aggregate calculations are measures, and then once you've gotten up into that aggregation thing, you there's no going backwards, and so it's just not possible to
Hmm.
turn a table calc into a dimension, for example.
Hmm.
Okay, so you with me on board? You want to build one view with one field and use all four pill types?
Yeah, so let's see what's
Yeah,
next.
let's see it.
Okay, so first build, we did a little bit of this in our previous conversation. We're going to be working with the order date, and I'm going to bring the order date out here in multiple different ways, on the columns as a dimension, as the week of the order date, and then on the rows and on the color as a measure, which is the distinct count of the order date. And so what's happening here is the color is just giving me a little bit of kind of spiciness to look at. And I'm looking at the distinct count of days upon which orders were received within each week. And so it's that within each week thing that is your key vocabulary that tunes you into the week of the order date as being treated as a dimension. And we'll look at this in our subsequent conversation about what happens there. But basically, with this one field, the order date, being used in all of these ways, I have it out both as a continuous measure and as a continuous dimension.
I've said it before, I'll say it again, but in doing it this way, using the week of order date as continuous, if for any reason you're missing data for a particular week or multiple weeks, it would be very obvious here because that line chart would drop to zero and you would immediately see, hey, we're missing data for these weeks. Maybe there was a problem with our data ingestion process, ETL, whatever on the back end. This brings that to light.
Yep, for sure. And we've covered that in our previous
Hmm.
two conversations. Encourage people to go back and look at those. Okay, so now we're still working with just the one column of data. And this to me is really the key to the message of Tableau being agnostic. We're using the one column of data, the order date. Now I'll just bring it out as a discrete dimension. And this discrete dimension, I'll make it as the quarter of the order date, just to give us a little bit of variety. And so I'm taking that previous viz that previously existed, bringing in the order date now as a dimension at the quarter grain. And as a discrete pill, what it's doing is it's giving me a new header for every quarter of the order date. And I get a new row header for every quarter of the order date. And it's taken that previous viz, which was the two axes that were from the two opposing continuous pills, and it's just partitioned the canvas up now and given me that one viz inside of a new row, a new discrete row, um, because of that discrete pill on the rows shelf.
Yep.
And so there's really two things that are happening here. We'll look at this in the subsequent conversation in greater detail. As a dimension, the quarter of the order date is sending a group by clause in the SQL that goes. And so that is what's happening when the quarter of the order date is being treated as a dimension. And that it's discrete is what's giving me a distinct header for every row.
And just to be clear, because week of order date and quarter of order date are both dimensions, they're both in that group by in the SQL.
Yep. Yep. And that really is the
Yep.
nature of treating a pill on the canvas as a dimension.
Hmm.
Okay. So now we can bring it out. The only thing we were missing to date was a discrete measure. And so what I've done is I've taken that original distinct count of the order date and just wrapped it in a total function. So a total table calculation, which itself is a measure. And I needed to configure the table calculation in order to partition so that I could get it to fit in one row per quarter. And so now what I've got here is the total count of orders within that quarter. And because I'm treating that total measure as a discrete pill, it also is rendering a table header, a distinct table header for every quarter. And so I get now two headers for the two discrete pills, the quarter, the dimension, and the total as the measure, just kind of augmenting and adjusting that original viz, which had the two opposing axes of the two original continuous pills.
And I really like this for showing all 4 pill types at once. And the other piece it helps demonstrate is that we don't have to be stuck with that. Either way, if we wanted to look at week of order date as a discrete and get a header for each week, we can do that. If we want to have it be more of a scatter plot kind of thing and have quarter as a continuous, we can do that too. That there's just that level of flexibility inside the canvas of Tableau.
Exactly. Even
Yeah.
if we don't want to display the data in exactly this way, I mean, you're showing it here to show how we can break these different things up. We can take any of those from the rows or column shelf and put it on color or size or any of those other types of cards, so that we can do all kinds of flexible comparisons visually.
Yep. And it's that flexible visual comparison here that to me is the main strength of Tableau. And it's one of the places that we'll continue to get to in the future mental model conversations, is that in its genesis, Tableau was really born as a tool for ad hoc visual analytics. And so I loved it in our previous conversation, Robert. You said, well, this is never a thing you would do, normally. And it's true that this particular viz is not necessarily one that I would publish up to an executive inside of an executive dashboard. However, for me as an analyst in this mode of ad hoc visual analytics, this could be a perfectly suitable viz that I use in ad hoc analysis mode that helps me to just kind of wrap my head around a question, answer an ad hoc analysis, and then keep moving on.
Yep.
Okay, so what we've done here is we've taken the one field, the one column in the underlying data, the order date, and we've brought it together onto the canvas in all 4 manners, all at the same time, as a discrete dimension, as a continuous dimension. We've brought it in as a continuous measure, and we've brought it in also as a discrete measure. And so this to me then it just kind of really illustrates this point that Tableau doesn't have any sort of opinion, and everything that you see there in that left-hand data pane is really just the place that you would begin from. And this to me is really kind of a fundamental feature of Tableau. You mentioned in one of our earlier conversations, Robert, that you just couldn't think of any other BI tools that really allowed for the author to make this distinction between discrete and continuous. And deeper than that, we have this ability to fine tune, dimension, or measure discrete and continuous, which puts a lot of power into the hand of that analyst in terms of ad hoc visual analytics.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that was it for today's conversation. Next time, we'll dig in a little bit deeper into parsing apart the difference between these 4 pill types. Today's Zen cone is to emphasize that Tableau is agnostic to the data, and you could really mark up the canvas in any way that pleases you.
Sounds good. Thanks, Keith.
Okay, thanks, guys. See you next time.
Thanks, Keith.
Bye.
Action Analytics.